Welcome. Today I want to go over a technique that I learned probably about a couple of years ago from a fabulous Unreal Engine guru. His name is, and I'm going to butcher it, but his name is, I believe, Dallas DePardue. And he's been working on The Mandalorian. He's worked on The Last Airbender. He's just really one of those absolutely phenomenal in Unreal Engine environment artists, and he showed me this trick, which is ultimately using 2D textures with displacement to create tiles that will permit you to build a very detailed foreground, and these tiles will then really beautifully blend in to the ground and blend together, right? If you make multiples of them, and it's technically a really easy trick. Some of you, I'm sure, can kind of like figure out how this is done right there, but at the same time, it really, if you look at this, it kind of like permits you to take a two-dimensional image and really create a three-dimensional tile out of it. So you're not just limited to photogrammetry tiles or something. You can do this ultimately with any image. As a matter of fact, you're able to run this through some other software like Substance Painter or whatnot, and Substance Painter will create different texture maps out of photographs that you potentially took. In this case scenario, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use stuff from Fab, Quixel particularly. But let's get started. And what we're also going to cover in here is how to actually use displacement in Unreal Engine 5.6, which should apply to 5.5, and I'm assuming it's going to be similar, if not identical, in 5.7. One of the issues that I have come across is that there are a lot of tutorials out there that pertain to 5.4, 5.3, and that ultimately, once the engine switched from 4.7 to, I think it was 4.7 to 5, displacement became an issue, and the engine, if you will, the developers seem to struggle to kind of like get this to work. And up to a certain point, I believe in 5.4 there was ultimately a hack to kind of like make it work, and then really in 5.5 it started working again to some extent. I mean, there's still some things where I'm kind of like wondering, right? So there's a possibility that in 5.7 this is gonna change again a little bit, or maybe it's gonna wait until 6. We'll see. But let's get this started, and take a look at it, and I'm going to show you how this works. So just gonna, here's a bunch of files I have in there, so I'm just gonna delete those, and I'm just gonna start this here from scratch. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into my modeling mode, and going to create, and we're going to create a rectangle. And you can see that in this case scenario, I've set this to 200 by 200. You can set it to whatever you want. What is important, this is really important, that you put in some subdivisions. I don't put in a lot of subdivisions. In my case, I put in 10. You can put in more, you can put in less, but you have to put in subdivisions. If you don't put any subdivisions in, this will not work. So we're just going to click accept. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to deform, and we're going to use the lattice tool. And you can see right there, the lattice tool is putting this grid on, and this is going to permit us to deform it. You can, again, you can change the resolution here. In my case scenario, off the truck, this will come up with like 5 vertices here at the end. Honestly, I don't really think it matters what you set this to. 2 is the least you can set to. You cannot set it to 1. But ultimately, what you're going to do is you're going to shift select all of these edge vertices right here. So missed one here. So we're just going to make sure that we have all of them selected. And then we're just going to bend this down. So I'm just going to grab my z-axis and I'm just going to bend this down like so. And then I'm going to click accept. So this is what we end up with. And the reason why we do this is because if it was a straight surface, it would be difficult to blend this together, but you can see that, let me go into selection mode here. You can see that now we can kind of like blend this into the ground and with each other, you know, much easier than if these were planes. Okay. And again, if you have a problem bending this down, like then you know, if what happens is that you want to accept this and it flips back up, then what you forgot to do was you forgot to put in the subdivisions. Okay. So all right. So now we're going to create a new material, and I've created a materials folder here, and let me delete the material I have because I'm gonna rebuild it. So I'm just gonna force delete this. And the material that's underneath here is the grass material, so that's this one. And now I'm going to create like this new clover material. So we're going to right click and we're going to create a material. And I'm going to call this MM for master material underscore clover. And to download this stuff from Fab, you just click on add and Fab. And then in this case, it's materials and textures. And in my case, what I used is Clover. And there's like a bunch, and I think I used this one right here, right, the first one. Take notice that some of the materials, the Quixel materials now on Fab, do not have a height map or displacement map anymore. So, well, let's get to this when I'm building it. We can discuss that then. So I've downloaded this already, and it's in my content folder now. Let me actually open this one. So here it is. And we're going to have to bring this in from right there. So this is this one, I believe. And it's under the textures. So here are my textures for this material. And as I said, what you can do is you can create your own photographs. And you do have to make them tileable, which is a Photoshop thing. I may, you know, it's fairly easy. I may do another tutorial on that if you guys want to. And, you know, just like put in the comments there if you want me to do that. You know, then you just, you can, in Substance Sampler, you know, can create the other maps. There's another free tool online as well. I have to look it up, but I know I have used something online. So grab that in here, and now we're just going to work on this. So this is our color. By the way, this is, you know, I'm sure a bunch of you guys know this, but, you know, just in case you're new to this, the confusingly color is gonna end up sometimes may be called albedo, and sometimes it may also be called diffuse. It's all the same thing. It's the color. And then this is our normal. We're gonna plug that in here, and then this is when if you check right there in the last three letters on the name are ORM, and O is for occlusion, R is for roughness, and M is for metallic. Now, and this is where it kind of like gets a little bit confusing, because in the past, uh, you would get from Quixel the textures. These are so-called packed textures, and they were ORDP, and DP was for displacement. And so one of the things that definitely got me, and I know got a bunch of people, was when Quixel switched from Bridge to Fab, which is still quite a bit of like, for those of us who are used to Bridge or were used to Bridge, it's a bit of a tragedy. The thing was, that a bunch of us tried to use the M texture for displacement, and it didn't work. And it was one of those things where it's a very obvious thing, but when you were so used that the last one was displacement, you just didn't look right. And because if you are now looking into here, so a packed texture is essentially really just three textures, three black and white textures packed into one. And so if I'm turning this off, so this right here is my red channel, then this is my green channel. And if you now check this out, this is my blue channel. So obviously you want to displace something. This is not going to do anything, right? So, it's kind of this was a bit of a surprise. So, as I said, red goes into ambient occlusion. Roughness is going to go into roughness. And, if we want to, we can put this into metallic. Now, one of the things that you're probably going to need to do is you're going to need to adjust your roughness. So it makes a lot of sense to multiply a roughness scaler in there. So I'm going to hit M and left click. And then I'm going to go S and left click, and that's a scalar parameter. And we're going to call this roughness. So I'm going to put this into here. And now we can plug this in between. Okay, so this now permits us to adjust our roughness with considering the image file as well. So with considering that texture. And another thing we probably want to do is we want to be able to adjust our tint. And in order to do that, so in order to adjust our color tint, what we need is we need a color node. We need a vector 3 node, so 3 channels. So hold 3, and it's gonna, our vector is gonna come up. Left click, hold 3, and left click, and we're gonna convert this to a parameter so we can adjust it in an instance. I'll explain this a little later what that is. And then, so we right click and go convert to parameter, and we're just going to call this tint. And we're going to multiply that in as well. And the moment I connect this, what's going to happen is you're going to see that the texture go, or the material go black right there. And that's because we're tinting it black. So let's put this back to white, right? But now if we're dialing stuff in, it's like we can make a color adjustment. So let's cancel this and let's put this to white again, click OK. So this is now this. If you need an additional brightness adjustment, then which can do, if you need to make it brighter than being fully white right here, because you can make it darker, right here. It's not a problem. So we can darken it down. But you may want to make it brighter. So you can just put a brightness in there. So multiply a brightness. So again, M left click, S left click. We're going to call this brightness. And now we can just connect this in here. And again, this is going to go black because our brightness is at 0. So again, black, right? So we don't want that. We are going to put this to 1. And so now this is normal, but if we want to, now we can put in, I'm just going to go 5, and you can see that this now when it's brighter. Okay, so back to 1. So we're just going to leave the default like this. And our roughness, you may have noticed that this looks very wet, and that's because our roughness right now is at 0. So we'll also default that to 1, and that, again, this is in consideration with the texture. So there is a shine to it because it is multiplying this number with the image texture, right? So I have to go up more, like to maybe 10, to make this completely flat, right? If we were to just patch in the number without anything, then it really would just be from 0 to 1. So at the moment, if I connect this, right in there, and if I let go, you can look at the ball, and you can see that it's going to go flat immediately, because now it's really just, total shiny is going to be 0, and totally flat is going to be 1. Okay, but because we're using it with the image, it's different. Okay, another thing we should do is so we're going to need this here later, but another thing we also need is we need to be able to adjust the size of our textures, and we're going to use a texture coordinates node. So right click and go texture coordinate right here. And you can see right there your UV tiling, are 2 numbers, and you could patch this into every single one, but it kind of like is annoying to have to adjust both numbers. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply another scalar in, and that is going to be scale. And so now this is going to have to go into every single one of our UV values, which are right here. And because we want those to match, we're putting it into all of them. You can see right there, our scalar parameter is at 0, and you can see what's happened, right? So if I put this at 1, we're back to normal. And if I put this, at I don't know, like 5, then it's going to get smaller. And if I put this at 0.1, it's going to be much bigger. Okay, so let's set this back to 1. So this is our normal, standard position. And we're almost done. Now, the one thing that we didn't do yet is the displacement, and that's going to be like, the main trick that we're using. And that's because by default, in the engine, in 5.6 at least, this is grayed out. So we're going to click on this, and we're going to type in here tessellation. So it's fine if you just go tess, and it should come up, and we're going to enable it, and that's going to give us the displacement here. And now we can, and this is now our height map. So H for height, and this is really, you can just use, it's like height, bump, displacement. There are differences, in kind of like when you look it up in the explanations, but for the most part, I would say, and, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part, I would say it's kind of like the same thing. So I'm just going to double click on this to show this to you. So this is our displacement map, and the thing is, it's just like a height map. It is a height map, right? So it's the bright stuff is higher and the dark stuff is lower. And there are times, if you're missing this, there are times when you can kind of cheat and use the occlusion map, because some of those Quixel maps will not come with it. And if you look at it, then our occlusion map is very similar. It's not quite the same, but it's similar. You may want to put in, it's called a cheap contrast node, that if you multiply that in, it will permit you to adjust the contrast on this. So technically, you can go in with the RGB, but it's a black and white. You can also go in with just the red. Either one should work just fine. And so this is now it. So now we are ready Now, the one thing, and this is now, for those of you if, you know, you may have figured this out. I've looked into it a little bit and I'm kind of like wondering, back in the day, what you could do is I'm not talking about engine 4.7 or something. What you could do is just multiply another scalar in here, and that would permit you then in the instance to scale the height of your displacement. I've tried it in here and it's not working very well. It just doesn't do it because it's designed to work here. So right here is the, nope, it's not. Where am I? Let me look it up here. Right here. So under displacement magnitudes, right? The default is at 4. And this is where you control it. The dilemma with this is that I don't think, I mean, I may be wrong, I have to look, but I don't think this is going to show up in our instances because it's not an exposed parameter. So now let's take a look at what an instance is. So I'm going to save this and close out, do a save all just in case. And let's take a look in our materials folder now, because so this is now the material that I just created. And I'm going to right click now and I'm going to create a material instance. And I'm going to call this one mi underscore clover. Now the thing is that it will actually put automatically in the end instance, INST or something. The thing is just that I like to put it into the front because when the name of this gets too long, that instance thing gets cut off. So so that's just why I like to put MM in the front and MI. It's very obvious what's an instance and what's your master material. And so now I can show you what the difference is. So we've built this material, and if I click on this here now, you can see that right here we have the various things that have been, that we have built. I was just looking right here because I actually never looked before if there is there actually is. Yeah, it's here. It's here. Okay. That solves the problem. We don't have to build it. It's automatically in here. So great. So it's under displacement scaling. It is an exposed parameter. So we don't have to build it in. So, all right. So here we have these are now the scalars that we built, right? We built brightness, roughness, and scale. And we built the tint. So if we connect, enable this, all of this can now be adjusted. Now, what we did not do is we did not turn our materials into something that can be adjusted, and we can quickly do that. So if we go back into our master material, you can right click on this and go convert to parameter. And now you can call this color or albedo or diffuse. I'm going to be fancy and call it albedo. So same thing. And then this one here, convert to parameter, and we're going to call this normal. And then I'm going to call this here ORM. So that's our packed texture. And then I'm going to call this here our height. Good. We're done. And now if I go and look into my my instance, these should be here. So I should be able to, now I can just go and import something else and drop them in here. And now I don't need to rebuild the material. I can just create another instance and do that, right? So now I have this instance here. So those are green. And if I now want to have some purple ones, let's say, I just create another material instance. And so I'm going to call these one purple. clover. And now I open this here up, and now I'm going to go into my tint and do this, and, you know, click OK. And now I have a purple clover. I did not need to copy or paste or rebuild anything, and I just can keep going. I can have brighter ones, darker ones, whatever you want, right? So all of this is fine. So we're almost done, but not quite. So now we want to put our material instance, right? We leave the master material as it is because any changes in the master material will affect all the instances, whereas a change in an instance will only affect this particular instance. So I'm going to take my green one and I'm going to drop this on here. And what you're noticing is that nothing is displacing. It's just as if we are, you know, there's nothing. Displacement not working. And the reason why it's not working is because, and this is another one of those little pitfalls, right? It's like you got to know this tessellation thing. A lot of people thought that in order to make this work, you got to, you know, like in 5.4, I believe you had to, you know, modify the code of the engine. No, you don't need to do any of this. But what needs to be done, what you need to be sure of, is that your object, so this is now an object that this sits on, that this object is actually a nanite object. And so let's take a look of where this is. So this object was put into a folder. The engine creates this generated folder when you create anything in the modeling mode. It creates this generated folder. You can also just click on the object. You click on this magnifying glass here, and it will take you straight there. So especially if you have like a bunch of those, like I do, that's good to kind of like to make you know which one it is. If I now right-click on this and go to nanite, and you can see that nanite is not enabled. So I'm just going to click on enabled nanite. This is going to take, you know, a short minute now. And once this is done preparing the shaders, ta-da, here is our displacement working, right? This may actually be a little much, but, you know, from the distance, it's not so bad. So we can, you know, we can now adjust this in our materials. So this is now, I want to do this in the instance because I want to, I can't, if I, again, if I adjust it in the master material, all of the instances are going to be adjusted, but I want to adjust this in the instance. And so let's take a look. Where did you go? There we are. So now if I, you know, let's put it to like 3. So it's a little less. 2, a little less. So 2 looks pretty good. Just to, you know, demonstrate this, if I go 10, right, it goes extreme. But, you know, 2 is probably a pretty sweet place to be. And now we can kind of like, well, one of the things we probably want to do is actually a tint adjustment, because you look at the grass and you can see that this doesn't quite blend in. Maybe a roughness adjustment too. So let's do it. Let's just look at this. So we're now, you know, the tint may be right, but the brightness may be a little bit too bright. So let's go, I don't know, let's go 0.7. That's pretty close. It's a little more blue than you know, the grass in the background. So that's now our tint adjustment. So we go in here. Opposite of blue is yellow. So we're gonna, you know, drag this a little bit into the yellow. There we go. Done. Right, and we built this, right? All of this was built by us. And so now you can see that this starts to blend pretty nicely in. We our roughness may be a little off. So let's make this a little less shiny. There we go. Look at that, blends in almost perfect. And now I can just alt click and drag this out, and you know, we can rotate this, and now we can just build, you know, an entire foreground with detail But ultimately, really, all we're using are images, right? This is not photogrammetried 3D. These are just images. And as I said, you can do this with any image you want. So this is a great way, in my opinion. This is a great way of adding detail to your environment. I mean, you can see right there, even though this grass is using some sort of displacement, it's the displacement on the grass is not working as great. Some textures work better than others. And you will see, and with some, you may actually be better off to take it into Substance Sampler and redoing it. But this is a very simple and effective way of using 2D images, of which there's a lot of them free available on Fab, and turning it into a 3D object. It's not truly 3D, but you know what I mean. It's a cheat, right? As the whole thing is a cheat, right? So, well, I hope that this was helpful to you guys, and happy world building with the stuff. And I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye bye.